I was in a horrific accident and left unconscious. The doctors called my parents, but my mom hung up saying, "She's not worth the hospital bill." When I spied on her visit, I heard her say, "She can rot there for all I care." I stared at her. The family meeting that followed would shatter every bond we had. I'm Samantha Foster. I grew up in Sacramento, California, where everything always seemed a bit too polished on the outside and rotted on the inside. Our house sat in a respectable suburban neighborhood with neatly trimmed hedges, American flags waving on every other porch, and perfectly synchronized sprinklers. But inside our two-story home, the atmosphere was always suffocating. My mother, Lorraine, ruled with an iron fist. She wasn't physically abusive, but her words were sharp enough to draw blood. My father, Gerald, was a retired Air Force engineer who had spent most of my childhood overseas. When he was home, he mostly withdrew into silence, letting my mother run the house like a commander running a failing army. Then there was my younger brother, Spencer. Golden child. He was the apple of my mother's eye, and could do no wrong. If Spencer wrecked the car, it was my fault for distracting him. If Spencer flunked out of college, twice, it was my fault for not helping him study. The expectations placed on me were impossible. Straight A's, scholarships, extracurriculars, I met every benchmark, desperate for some kind of acknowledgement from my mother. But love from Lorraine was conditional, and I never seemed to meet the conditions. By my late 20s, I finally made the decision to distance myself. I landed a decent job as a data analyst in San Francisco, about an hour-and-a-half drive from Sacramento, and got my own small apartment in Pacific Heights. It wasn't much, but it was mine. I saw my family on holidays, always leaving those dinners emotionally drained and reaffirmed in my choice to keep my distance. But all it took was one rainy November night for everything to unravel. The accident wasn't my fault. I was driving home from work, exhausted but alert, carefully navigating the wet roads near the Golden Gate Bridge. The fog was dense, making visibility near impossible. I was only a few minutes from home when a black SUV ran the red light. It hit my car with full force, sending me into a spin that felt both endless and instantaneous. I remember the sound of metal crunching, glass shattering, and then nothing. When I woke up, 2 weeks had passed. The beeping of machines greeted me, along with the sterile scent of antiseptics and the dull ache that pulsed through my entire body. My head felt heavy, my throat dry. Tubes were inserted into my arms, and monitors surrounded my bed. The nurse, Selena, smiled softly when she noticed my eyes flutter open. "Welcome back, Samantha," she whispered. "You're very lucky." I could barely nod. The accident had left me with multiple fractures, internal bleeding, and a traumatic brain injury. The doctors later explained that my survival was uncertain for the first few days. I soon learned what was worse than my injuries. One afternoon, still too weak to sit up properly, I overheard Selena and another nurse talking just outside my door. "I can't believe her mother said that," one whispered. "Yeah," Selena sighed, she hung up on the doctors. "Told them, she's not worth the hospital bill." A numb, cold wave washed over me. It wasn't even entirely surprising, it was more like a final confirmation of something I'd always feared was true. My mother's love for me was transactional. And apparently, I wasn't worth the cost of my own life. Days passed. I tried to heal my body while my mind spiraled. I didn't hear from my parents once. No calls, no visits, nothing. Only Mia, my best friend, came regularly, bringing me books, comfort, and warmth. Then one morning, Selena informed me that my parents were coming by for the first time. I was furious but curious. I needed to see them. Against medical advice, I persuaded Selena to wheel me into a corner of the hallway where I could see without being seen. Lorraine strutted down the hallway in her designer coat, her heels clicking sharply against the linoleum. Gerald followed behind, as silent and hollow as always. "She can rot there for all I care," Lorraine hissed to my father, not even lowering her voice. "They called me again yesterday. Unbelievable. As if I'm going to spend my retirement savings on that ungrateful brat." She made her bed. Gerald didn't respond. He never did. The rage that bubbled inside me at that moment was nothing like anything I'd ever felt before. It wasn't just anger, it was clarity. I no longer wanted her approval. I wanted justice. The betrayal wasn't isolated to this moment. The accident was just the detonator. Over the next few days, my mind replayed every slight, every moment of humiliation. The way Lorraine always twisted the narrative so Spencer was the victim and I was the villain. The countless times she weaponized guilt, money, and shame. And, more recently, a lingering question I never dared ask until now, the trust fund my grandmother had set up for me. Growing up, I was told Grandma left a small fund for Spencer and me. Spencer had used his share after high school. Mine, I was told, didn't exist. I'd questioned it once as a teenager and got punished for my disrespect. My mother told me Grandma changed her will at the last minute. But something about that had always felt wrong. Now, with nothing left to lose, I asked Mia to help me investigate while I was still recovering. Mia was resourceful. She tracked down Grandma's old attorney, Mr. Whitaker, who was still alive and practicing in Sacramento. After some convincing and legal paperwork, he confirmed my suspicions. The trust fund did exist. Half of it was legally mine. My mother had forged documents, transferred the funds to herself, and funneled much of it into Spencer's failed business ventures over the years. The amount wasn't just significant, it was life-changing. Hundreds of thousands of dollars stolen. The betrayal ran so much deeper than I'd imagined. I consulted a lawyer immediately. The case was strong. Fraud, financial elder abuse, embezzlement. Lorraine and Spencer were both implicated. Gerald was technically complicit too. But before the legal storm fully unfolded, I wanted one final confrontation. I invited them all to my apartment under the guise of a family meeting, letting them think I was still weak, desperate, maybe even willing to reconcile. They showed up exactly as I expected, Lorraine in her pearls and tailored pantsuit, Spencer pretending to be bored, and Gerald as usual looking like a deer in headlights. I didn't waste time. "I know about the trust fund," I said calmly. The color drained from Lorraine's face instantly. Spencer froze. "I have the full documentation. Grandma never revoked my portion." "You stole it." "4 years." "You don't know what you're talking about," Lorraine snapped, but her voice wavered. "Stop. I know everything now. And I've hired a lawyer." For once, Spencer broke his silence. "Sam, come on. You're not really going to make this a legal thing, are you?" I looked directly at him. "You stole from me. Both of you. And when I almost died, you didn't even care if I lived or died." Lorraine tried to regain control. "We did what we had to do for the family. For Spencer. You were always going to be fine. You hung up in the hospital." I nearly shouted, my voice cracking. "You said I wasn't worth the bill." "That's not how I meant it, it's exactly how you meant it." Gerald opened his mouth, but all he could offer was a weak, "Sam, honey, it's complicated." "No, Dad, it's not. It's theft. It's betrayal. And I'm done." Lorraine's mask finally slipped entirely. "You ungrateful little witch. After everything we've done for you." I laughed bitterly. "Done for me? You mean everything you took from me? Everything you did to break me down year after year? I was never enough for you." They knew they were cornered. They thought I'd stay quiet forever, as I always had. But this time, I wasn't the same Samantha they raised. The silence that followed was thick. Heavy. I could see it settling over them like smog, poisoning whatever thin string of civility was left. Lorraine's jaw tightened, her lips pressing into a thin, bloodless line. She was calculating, always calculating, trying to decide if she should keep denying or switch tactics. "You've always had a flair for drama, Samantha," she finally said, voice cold, almost mocking. "You think this will hold up in court? You think they'll believe your version? You've had emotional issues before." Ah. There it was. The weapon she'd always kept ready in her arsenal: discredit my mental health. Every bout of anxiety in college, every therapy appointment, every time I struggled under her thumb, it was all ammunition to her. But I was ready for that too. My medical records show I've been treated for anxiety and trauma that you caused, Lorraine. But being anxious doesn't make me delusional. The bank records are real. The forged signatures are real. The financial transfers into Spencer's LLCs are real." Spencer shifted uncomfortably, visibly sweating now. "I didn't know she forged anything," he said quickly, throwing his hands up. "Mom handled all that stuff. I thought Grandma changed her will." "Oh, spare me, Spencer," I snapped. "You've been living off that money for years. You never once questioned where it came from? I trusted Mom, he fired back, but his voice cracked halfway through. Lorraine whipped her head toward him, eyes blazing. Don't you dare try to pin this on me, she hissed. For the first time in my life, I watched them turn on each other. It was a strange, almost surreal thing to witness. The ironclad team of Lorraine and Spencer fracturing in real time. Gerald looked like he wished he could evaporate. Dad, I said, locking eyes with him, I know you knew. Maybe you didn't sign anything yourself, but you stood by while they stole from me. You stood by while she disowned me in a hospital bed. His shoulders slumped even more, and his voice came out barely above a whisper. I didn't know what to do, Samantha. Your mother, she isn't some force of nature, Dad, I cut in sharply. You let her do this. That makes you just as responsible. He lowered his head, saying nothing else. The weight of it all hung there, years of manipulation, control, enabling, cowardice. Every memory of being belittled at dinner tables, blamed for Spencer's mistakes, criticized for my choices, my appearance, my personality, piled onto this moment. And they all knew there was no turning back now. Lorraine inhaled deeply, attempting one last pivot. Look. We're family, she said in a softer tone, the kind she'd use when trying to appear reasonable to outsiders. You're not thinking clearly. You're still recovering from that accident. You've been through a terrible trauma. Maybe we made mistakes, but surely we can find a way to settle this. Quietly. Privately. Settle, I repeated flatly, almost laughing. You want me to stay quiet, I continued. Like I always have. Like when you forced me to cover for Spencer's arrests in college. Like when you forged my name on those financial aid documents. Like when you lied about Grandma's will. Her mask slipped again, but only for a brief second. You're throwing away your family, she snapped, voice rising. No, I said. You threw me away. A long time ago. I'm just finally catching up. The doorbell rang at that exact moment, a knock, sharp and deliberate. I had arranged for my attorney, Ms. Valencia, to arrive precisely at this time. I needed them to understand how serious I was. Lorraine's head jerked toward the sound, eyes narrowing. Who the hell is that? Legal counsel, I replied simply, turning toward the door and letting Ms. Valencia in. She stepped inside briskly, carrying a thick manila folder under her arm. She was composed, her face unreadable, wearing a charcoal gray suit that seemed to absorb all the tension in the room and weaponize it. Good afternoon, she said smoothly. I'm here to serve preliminary notices of litigation. You've all been made aware of the allegations. We will proceed formally from here. Lorraine's face strained. Spencer blanched. Gerald just closed his eyes. You're really doing this? Lorraine rasped, her voice suddenly small. You're really going to destroy this family? There's nothing left to destroy, I answered. Not anymore. Ms. Valencia handed over the papers without hesitation, laying them on my coffee table as Lorraine recoiled like they were radioactive. No further discussion without counsel, Valencia stated, her voice calm, professional, but icy. Lorraine stared at me then, silent for several long seconds. Her mouth opened once, then closed. I think she wanted to scream. I half expected her to launch into one of her explosive tirades, but no. She saw that it wouldn't work this time. The power had shifted. She stood abruptly, straightened her jacket, and grabbed her handbag. We'll see about this, she spat under her breath, and stormed out, heels stabbing the hardwood floor like gunshots. Spencer hesitated for half a second before scurrying behind her, his face pale and slick with sweat. Gerald stayed frozen, sitting on my couch like a child caught cheating. He finally looked at me one last time before rising. I'm sorry, Samantha, he said softly. I really am. I didn't respond. I just watched him leave. The door clicked shut. For a moment, the apartment was silent except for the dull ticking of the wall clock. My whole body was trembling, but not from fear or anxiety this time. It was something else. Relief. Ms. Valencia exhaled slowly and gave me a small nod. That went about as well as one could expect. I let out a breath I hadn't realized I'd been holding for years. I didn't think they'd break that easily. Guilt rarely wears as much armor as people think, she said, calmly collecting her paperwork. I sat back in my chair, exhausted but strangely lighter. Years of manipulation and fear, disarmed in one brutal afternoon. But I knew this was just the beginning. The legal process would be long, public, and ugly. And I was ready for it. The following weeks unfolded like a chess game, one slow, deliberate move after another. My attorney, Ms. Valencia, was ruthless, exactly what I needed. She filed the lawsuits swiftly: fraud, embezzlement, financial elder abuse, forgery. Everything we had airtight evidence for, and there was plenty. Lorraine tried to stall, of course. She filed countersuits, trying to have my claims dismissed. She even tried to spin her narrative to anyone who would listen, portraying me as the bitter, unstable daughter lashing out in some kind of revenge fantasy. That part hurt, even though I had anticipated it. Family friends I hadn't heard from in years started reaching out, some offering thinly veiled sympathy, others fishing for gossip. Most had no idea about the depth of manipulation that had gone on behind closed doors. To them, Lorraine was still the perfect suburban matriarch, until now. Because once the lawsuits became public record, so did the evidence. The financial records, the forged signatures, the documented withdrawals, all of it meticulously prepared by Ms. Valencia's firm. The paper trail was devastating. Every dollar Spencer had received traced back to my stolen inheritance. Every lie Lorraine told unraveled under scrutiny. The Sacramento Bee even picked up the story after a local reporter dug into the public filings. Prominent Sacramento family faces fraud allegations in trust fund scandal. My mother's carefully curated social reputation was beginning to rot in broad daylight. And the best part? I didn't have to say a word. The documents spoke louder than I ever could. The first court hearing was brutal. Lorraine showed up looking defiant, dressed in an expensive cream-colored suit, her chin held high. Spencer sat beside her, pale and fidgety. Gerald was there too, seated one row back, looking 10 years older than he had just a few months earlier. His skin had gone sallow, and his hair grayer. I sat at my attorney's table with Valencia beside me, calm but alert. I could feel Lorraine's eyes drilling into me, but I didn't meet her gaze. Not today. When the judge laid out the initial evidence and accepted it into record, I caught the moment Lorraine's mask cracked. It was subtle, a barely perceptible twitch in her left eye, a faint tightening of her lips, but I saw it. For the first time, she realized she wasn't in control. Outside the courtroom, cameras waited. I didn't stop to talk. I wasn't there for headlines. But seeing Lorraine try to dodge the reporters while hiding behind oversized sunglasses was its own kind of quiet satisfaction. At home that night, Mia poured us both a glass of wine. To complete phase 1, she said with a smirk, clinking her glass against mine. Phase 1, I echoed. God, it feels weird. Good weird. I nodded. Yeah. But there's still a long way to go. We sat in silence for a while, sipping, watching the San Francisco lights blink through my living room window. Then my phone buzzed. A text. From Gerald. Can we talk? Alone. I stared at it for a while, my gut twisting. The man who had stood silently beside my mother for decades now wanted to speak, alone, after everything? Mia glanced over my shoulder. You gonna respond? I sighed. I don't know. He's probably just scared. Maybe. But maybe not, she said. Maybe he finally grew a spine. Or maybe he's looking for a deal. Mia shrugged. Either way, information is power, Sam. After a long moment, I typed back a simple response: tomorrow. 10 a.m. My place. When Gerald arrived the next morning, he looked smaller somehow. Not physically, but like the weight of his own choices was finally crushing him. He sat stiffly in the chair across from me, hands clasped tightly in his lap. Thank you for seeing me, he said quietly. I didn't respond right away. I just watched him. I need you to know that I didn't know the full extent of what your mother was doing, he started. Not at first. I knew about the trust fund being redirected, but she told me you agreed to it. That you said you didn't need it. That you wanted it to go to Spencer. My stomach churned. You actually believed that? After everything? His eyes dropped to his hands. I wanted to believe it. It made things easier. Your mother, she's not easy to stand up to. I felt a familiar surge of bitter anger rise in me. No, Dad. She's not easy to stand up to because you never tried. He flinched but didn't deny it. I should have protected you, he finally admitted. His voice cracked, like the words physically hurt him. I failed you, Samantha. Repeatedly. I crossed my arms. And now you're scared because you're on the hook for it. He winced. Yes. I am scared. But I'm not here to beg for myself. I want to help you. Testify, if necessary. Give you whatever documents you need. I narrowed my eyes. Why now? Because I finally see her for what she is. And I see what I've allowed to happen. He paused, swallowing hard. The accident, when they called us and she hung up, that broke something in me. I should have gone to you that day. I should have done something. But I was weak. The words hung in the air. I don't expect forgiveness, he added. I just want to do something right before it's too late. I studied with him. For once, he didn't sound like he was making excuses. He sounded defeated. Maybe genuinely remorseful. Or maybe just desperate. You have records? I asked cautiously. He nodded quickly, pulling a small thumb drive from his pocket. Copies of everything I could get my hands on. Emails, bank statements, even the forged documents Lorraine kept in her office. I know it's not much, but I took the drive without speaking, gripping it tightly. It's a start, I finally said. He exhaled in relief, his shoulders sagging. I didn't offer him comfort. Not yet. Maybe not ever. When Gerald left, I handed the drive to Ms. Valencia immediately. She was ecstatic. It was the final nail in Lorraine's coffin. This will absolutely blow their defense apart, she said, scrolling through the files. You may have just saved us months of subpoenas. And yet, even with the growing mountain of evidence, Lorraine was still fighting like a cornered animal. Within days, her lawyer filed a motion accusing me of coercion, claiming that my father's testimony was manipulated under duress. Classic Lorraine, if she couldn't win on facts, she'd try to twist perception. But public sympathy was turning. With every court hearing, more details emerged. More reporters began digging into Spencer's failed businesses, exposing tax fraud, unpaid debts, and shady dealings. Spencer had creditors circling like vultures now. Even some of my mother's former social circle had begun to distance themselves. The perfect suburban queen of Sacramento was becoming a pariah. And I wasn't done yet. There was still so much more to come. The case dragged on for months. Each hearing revealed another crack in their defense, another dirty secret exposed. My mother was no longer able to control the narrative, the truth was being peeled open like layers of rotting skin. The local media kept following the case, and slowly, people who had once admired Lorraine began to turn away. She tried to hold on, attending charity luncheons, posting carefully curated photos online, but every time she stepped out, there was a camera, a microphone, or a new article about the lawsuit, the fraud, or the mountain of debt piling around Spencer. Lorraine's voice, once so commanding, grew shrill every time we were in court. She'd whisper furiously to her lawyer, red-faced as evidence after evidence was submitted. Spencer, who started out acting cocky and dismissive, had become visibly anxious, sweating through hearings, sometimes snapping at reporters. He had lost most of his investors, and creditors were hounding him for repayment. Gerald kept his word. His testimony was the final blow. He admitted under oath that Lorraine had lied about my agreement to give up my trust fund. He explained how she handled all finances and forged my signature. He described how she bullied him into staying silent for years. He acknowledged that he enabled her, and in doing so, failed me. It was brutal to hear him say it aloud. Brutal, but validating. By the time we reached the final settlement negotiations, Lorraine was no longer the icy, poised woman she once was. She was cornered, desperate, and unraveling. Their attorney asked for a private settlement discussion. I agreed. We met in a cold, sterile conference room, with Ms. Valencia and opposing counsel present. Lorraine sat stiffly across from me, Spencer slumped beside her, his face pale and hollow. Her lawyer began, clearly uncomfortable. We would like to propose a full settlement in exchange for withdrawal of all criminal charges and an agreement to keep this matter sealed from further public exposure. I stayed silent, letting them sweat. Ms. Valencia spoke calmly. What's your offer? Lorraine spoke directly to me, her voice trembling as she tried to control her tone. We'll return your trust fund in full. With interest. And additional damages. Amount? Valencia asked, stone-faced. 2 million, her lawyer answered. That's our offer. I glanced at Valencia. We both knew they were terrified of a full trial. The criminal charges would likely lead to prison for Lorraine. The financial devastation alone had already begun. But money was never the only thing I wanted. It was never just about the dollar amount. I wanted them to lose what they valued most. Control. Reputation. Pride. Power. I leaned forward, folding my hands on the table. My voice was calm, steady. No criminal charges? No trial? Fine. Lorraine exhaled in relief. But, I continued, I want a public statement. Her eyes narrowed. What kind of statement? A written, notarized admission of guilt. Signed by both of you. Full admission of theft, forgery, and financial abuse. You'll release it to the press personally. A full confession. Spencer's jaw dropped. No way. Absolutely not. Lorraine turned beet red, her hands trembling. You can't demand that. I can. And I am, I said. Or we go to trial, and the press will have access to every single detail anyway. But this way, you control how it's worded. You get to confess with some dignity, if you can even still claim any. They both looked toward their lawyer. He was pale too, flipping through documents, whispering furiously to Lorraine. Finally, he sighed. It's her best option, he said softly. Better than prison. Lorraine slammed her hand on the table, eyes blazing. You vindictive little, but her voice cracked before she could finish. She looked at me as though seeing me for the first time, not the invisible, compliant daughter she thought she raised, but the one she never imagined, unafraid, unmovable. She finally dropped her head. Fine, she hissed. You want a public confession? You'll get it. Spencer threw his hands up. I'm ruined. You've ruined everything. No, Spencer, I said, standing up. You and Mom ruined yourselves. I just finally stopped protecting you. The deal was finalized 2 weeks later. Their confession hit the media like a bombshell. Sacramento family admits to fraud, financial elder abuse and trust fund scandal. The written statement was plastered across news outlets, shared and reshared on social media. The charity boards Lorraine once sat on expelled her overnight. Her bridge club friends distanced themselves immediately. She was stripped from community organizations. The suburban queen was disgraced. Spencer's failed businesses completely collapsed under financial investigation, and with the confession out, his creditors swarmed. His bankruptcy was public and humiliating. No one would invest in him again. Gerald, quietly, divorced Lorraine within months. He sold the house, the same house I grew up in, where so much of this pain was created. The home was gutted, repainted, and sold off to strangers. And me? I moved forward. The money recovered was nice, more than enough to secure my future comfortably, but what meant more was the peace. The silence. The absence of their looming presence. I kept my circle small, Mia, a few trusted friends, my therapist, and myself. I didn't rebuild any relationship with Gerald. His apology had come far too late. I didn't forgive, but I also didn't carry the weight of it anymore. Lorraine tried to reach out once. A letter. Handwritten. No apology, of course. Just blame and self-pity. I didn't respond. I framed the letter and hung it on the wall in my office, not out of spite, but as a reminder. Of what I survived. Of what I took back. Of who I became. Because sometimes, revenge isn't about rage or cruelty. Sometimes it's about taking back your power, and watching those who tried to destroy you crumble under the weight of their own lies. A lot of people have messaged me asking if I regret anything. The answer is no. What I went through nearly broke me, but surviving it gave me something far more valuable than their approval ever could. Peace. And the knowledge that I will never allow anyone to take my worth away again.